my god, F1 fantasy is interesting again. Okay, excitement levels high. My name's Tom. I'm going to be talking about F1 fantasy, and McLaren have made things interesting because the developers this year are struggling to do so. So McLaren, Zach Brown comes in and he's just like, let's throw a load of money at this upgrade. We're going to throw everything we can at this. Lando, get your dad to cough up some money. We're going to put some more money, forget the budget, put it down to catering, it'll be fine. And look what's happened. The McLarens are suddenly incredible on around Silverstone. Anyway, the big question is this form going to continue? Do we put them in our teams straight away? Do we go all in on them? Do we put Norris, Fernando out for Norris straight away? I mean, we can straight away go for like a triple up team. 3 simple changes from this team. We can go Norris, get the constructor in there, McLaren, and then with my budget, I'd be forced to go with Hülkenberg, which isn't fantastic. But you could straight away go crazy and break the template. Ignore the Aston Martins and be in Wonderland. It's so exciting. However, is this the correct thing to do? Let's hop back into reality and put the green back in the team. So the big question mark is basically, do we start going crazy for McLaren? And that's obviously going to be one of the main talking points in this video. Other talking points are going to be obviously Danny Ricciardo is back in F1, and which is also really exciting. I feel bad. I'm not going to lie for Nick de Vries. I think he could have potentially had a bit more time, and I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of it, but I think it takes a lot of time for drivers to make that step up, and he just wasn't given enough time. Maybe just lacked a bit of confidence. But regardless, what's happened has happened. Ricciardo's coming back. We haven't seen him make an appearance yet in fantasy. We see De Vries is still lurking here with his 20 points across the first pretty much half of the season. Maybe that's why they got rid of him. Maybe just doing so badly in fantasy, they're like, get him out, get Ricciardo back in. Although that said, by that reckoning, maybe Logan Sargent should also be out of the Williams, but who knows? Nick De Vries is still here. We don't know what price Fernando Ricciardo, whatever his name is, Danny Ricciardo, is going to come in at. I'm going to talk about Danny Ricciardo. Let's leave that till later. I'll put a chapter in. You can go straight to the Danny Ricciardo section if you want to. There we go. The other section of this video is going to be me talking through answering your questions on Twitter. I put a tweet out the other day just asking just any questions you have about F1 Fantasy. So I'm going to go through that. However, I will say a little caveat that probably some of your questions, or quite a lot of the questions, will be kind of answered in the main bulk of the video. But by all means, if you're just here for the Twitter questions, again, go to the chapter towards the end. But let's get into the main topic, in my opinion, which is McLaren. Do we go all in them? Do we hold on? Do we still trust Aston Martin? Is Lance Stroll still the go-to sort of mid-range option? However, as you can see, my team has already changed away from Lance Stroll. But going into Silverstone, I took that kind of small gamble, breaking away from the template ever so slightly, just by tweaking both my budget driver and my kind of mid-price Stroll slot driver. I like the look of the McLaren's race pace in the Silverstone practice sessions, and that's why I took a little bit of a punt on Piastri, which paid off really well. And similarly, Albon was just phenomenal through the practice sessions. Like, was he P2, P1, or something rather? I don't know. He was incredible through Silverstone practice sessions. I thought I can't just not put him in, so I did, and he did all right. Did all right for his price. Got 8 points, I think. So, like I said, I've already kind of broken away a little bit from the template. The big question now is, do we go all in and just go crazy for McLaren? And I feel like the first couple of minutes of this video has been me getting like really excited, McLaren, and now I need to come crashing back to earth, and I'm thinking, actually, for the Hungaroring, I'm not entirely sure that McLaren are going to be that great. I mean, obviously, there's actually a bit more of an upgrade. I believe this final part of the upgrade, this big upgrade package is coming. I don't know if it's, again, I don't know. I should probably have done this research before doing this video. I don't know if it's going to both Piastri and Norris's car. I'm not sure exactly. I feel like Piastri is probably going to be consistently a race behind, I would imagine, but I don't know. But either way, I think Norris's upgrade should be complete coming into Hungaroring. Hopefully give them a bit more pace around the slower corners, because Hungaroring, very different track to Silverstone. Silverstone, very fast, high-speed corners, which obviously favoured the McLaren, as we've seen. Lewis Hamilton saying the McLaren is a rocket ship going through the high-speed corner, just couldn't keep up with them, couldn't make any gains, couldn't get any overtakes done because they're just too fast. However, in the Hungaroring, high-speed corners are not really a thing. It's a lot more slower and medium pace kind of corners. So are we going to see the McLaren struggle a little bit? Do we need to keep our feet on the ground and just be a bit more realistic? Because the Aston Martins have been much stronger through the season so far in these types of tracks. We think of like the likes of Monaco, for example. I think the Aston Martin did pretty well. So let's see if I can. Oh, there's the Twitter questions later on. So if we head over to Monaco and see what happened, we can see Alonso P2. Stroll, to be fair, I don't think he had that DNF. Stroll's an anomaly. Okay, it's fine. Alonso did well in Monaco. What other tracks are kind of similar? There aren't really many tracks similar, actually, thinking about it. They're all kind of quite high-speed tracks so far, aren't they? I suppose that's the nature of F1. Canada, maybe to some extent. What happened in Canada? Alonso P2 again, and Stroll, although he had a bad qualifying, kind of did all right in the race. So yeah, I do think that the likes of Hungary are just going to suit the Aston Martin slightly more than from the McLaren, based on what we've seen so far. However, I wouldn't write off McLaren because I do think that these upgrades, we don't know exactly how well they're going to perform around Hungary, and they didn't even do particularly well through the practice sessions in Silverstone. But still, you've got to look at that underlying race pace. And again, I think for the Hungary as well, because overtaking is a bit more difficult. Not that it's super easy around Silverstone, but I do think overtaking is going to be difficult, so qualifying could be important. So yeah, it's going to be important when it comes to the practice sessions to have a good look at both the qualifying pace and the race pace on the McLarens to see how they compare with the Aston Martins, because let's face it, in terms of fantasy, it's McLaren versus Aston Martin, because those are the price points where the competition is. And I hate to say it, that at the moment, as much as I want to get excited and carried away, and I have got a little bit excited and carried away, if you haven't noticed so far in this video, at the moment, I hate to say it, but I think sticking to the Aston Martins might actually be more sensible. I don't know what you guys think about that or feel about that. Am I being a little bit too conservative? Do I need to be a bit more bold and go for it? And I feel like this year as well, being a little bit more bold and trying to, moving away from the way I've played fantasy so far, where generally I just play super safe, go for the easy option, who I think is just going to score the most points, go for the safest, reliable option rather than trying to spike points. But I feel like because it's so close, I feel like it's almost like all or nothing this season. We have to try and make some bold picks, and this is definitely a tricky one going into the Hungary, because like I say, it is kind of a 50-50 at the moment until we see some practice session times and get a bit more feedback through driver interviews and that sort of thing. We don't know for sure who's looking stronger, Aston Martin or McLaren. My current hunch, sadly, is that Aston Martin will be stronger, but you can't deny that the McLarens were incredible around Silverstone and they could keep up that form going into Hungary. And obviously, after Hungary, and we've got Spa, and I think Spa is going to suit McLaren pretty well, and it probably won't suit Aston Martin well. So if we don't jump on McLaren for Hungary and their prices go up again, could we be sort of a little bit cut adrift and left with our Aston Martin assets going into Spa, where I don't think the track particularly suits them, and then you want to get to McLaren but you can't get there because of your budget, blah blah blah. So it's a bit of a, the budget changes. I'm glad that the changes are more significant now. It does put a bit more food for thought into our team selections each week. So, do we want to just go McLaren, take the gamble that they're going to do okay around the Hungary and then just sort of lock them in place going into Spa? I don't know. If I was going to do that, again, I'd probably, because I think Aston Martin are still probably going to be quite strong around Hungary, I probably wouldn't go all in. I'd probably leave in Fernando Alonso, price wise, and maybe you could argue going in and putting the McLarens in, cutting down Alex Albon, who I also think Albon and the Williams isn't going to be particularly strong around here. They much prefer those full throttle tracks, nice straights to go down, and I think the Williams isn't going to have a great weekend personally around the Hungary. I am simplifying things obviously, but I just think in general the Williams isn't well suited to this track. And drivers, that leaves us with 5.4 million. So obviously, depending on what happens with Danny Ricciardo, which I need to talk about in a second, if Danny Ricciardo just comes straight in to De Vries' slot, then I think I've just got to go Danny Ricciardo. I mean, let's talk about Danny Ricciardo now, because I'm off on one of my tangents, so let's just go on with it. If Danny Ricciardo comes in at the same price as De Vries, or even in my case, I can afford up to 0.9 more than this. If he comes in at the same price, which I think he should come in at the same price and have his price adjusted after the Hungary Grand Prix, because it's not really fair on people that don't already own De Vries. I suppose you could kind of gamble and just put De Vries in your team right now, assuming that he'll just automatically get switched for Ricciardo. And if the automatic switch happens and Ricciardo comes in at a higher price, then are the developers just going to give De Vries owners an extra bit of budget for doing nothing? It doesn't seem fair. So I feel like the only fair way really to do it is for the developers to put Danny Ricciardo in at 4.5 million, a direct replacement for De Vries, which is kind of what we've seen in the past when this sort of thing's happened. So yeah, if Ricciardo does come in at 4.5 million, I think I'm almost certainly going to put him in. I don't know. I don't know there's a couple of reasons really, because I think first of all, obviously driver of the day possibility, I think is a high chance of driver of the day, kind of regardless of what else happens. I mean, obviously if someone else has a genuinely fantastic race, like Norris qualifies P10 and then ends up on the podium, maybe he'll get driver of the day or whatever. I don't know, it's a random example. But in general, I think as long as Ricciardo kind of finishes the race, then I think the fans will just vote him driver of the day, and it's just 10 points in the bag. So that's kind of the main reason why I want to pick him. Also, another reason is because of price increase. If he does do well, then I think his price will probably go up because it's Ricciardo. You know, Ricciardo versus De Vries. Then no disrespect to De Vries, but I think Ricciardo is probably just a better driver and at least more experienced and Grand Prix winner, etc., etc. So yeah, I do think that there's lots of bonuses for putting Ricciardo in, and it's kind of low risk. The budget option is kind of a bit like meh, like pick your poison basically. And yeah, so if Daniel Ricciardo comes in at an affordable price, then I think that's definitely something I would do. And I could very well end up with a team like this, having that McLaren. Like I say, I'm just not sure they're going to be very good around Hungary, which concerns me. And we could see patience pay off by holding on to Aston Martin for one more week before going in full on to the McLarens for Spa. And I know you probably hate me for saying that, but I think it might be sensible to stick with the Aston Martins, but it's a tough one. So to sum up in terms of team selection, basically I'm probably almost not going to touch the Red Bulls for the foreseeable future. They're going to bring another upgrade from what I understand from my Twitter sources, random people I follow on Twitter. Apparently the Red Bulls are bringing in an upgrade that's going to give them a couple of temps extra, as if they needed it anyway. So I think just tripling up on the Red Bull seems pretty sensible. Again, doubling up on Max Verstappen with the DRS boost seems sensible. Ricciardo, I think, just looks like, depending on price, as long as he doesn't randomly come in at 8 million or something stupid, then we should just be putting him in our teams for driver of the day fodder. And then past that is competition between McLaren and Aston Martin. And as much as I want to get excited about Aston Martin, I'm not excited about Aston Martin. I was excited about Aston Martin at the beginning of the season. Now I'm excited about McLaren. Let me get my words right. But yeah, I don't think that actually gives me 2.7 million left to play around with as well. Actually, that's kind of interesting. I could also just kind of go Norris as well. Gives me 1.2 million. Yeah, it doesn't quite stretch me to McLaren constructor. I'm like, yeah, 0.6 short. I'm sure there'll be people out there with a budget that can go at that, and fair enough. But I personally, like I say, leaning towards more Aston Martin in terms of constructor as well. I think the trouble is I can comfortably afford the McLarens, and if they go up by like another million, then suddenly I might find myself unable to afford them, particularly if I also want to switch Alonso to Norris. So again, the price consideration is a bit of a tough one. But again, because my hunch at the moment is that the Aston Martins will be stronger, kind of makes me want to hold off and stick with the Aston Martins, but obviously I'm going to make that decision after the practice sessions. I'll be doing another video Friday evening after FP2, so stay tuned for that to get a bit more information. But otherwise, I think the team is going to look kind of like this. I'll probably leave Piastri in over Stroll, because Stroll's just not impressed me in the last few races. I know it's kind of good when he doesn't qualify well and he makes up some gains and overtakes in the race. But I don't know. I feel like Piastri, I want to edge my bets a little bit and have a bit of McLaren cover if I'm not going to go with them as like a constructor. And I definitely, almost certainly want them going into Spa. So I think having Piastri just holding in place there seems like a sensible thing. Just kind of spread the points a little bit. Just kind of ignore Stroll a little bit. Then if that's my argument as well, then maybe I should just go in with McLaren. If I don't like the look of Stroll, then maybe I should just ditch off the Aston Martins and just go McLaren and go with a team like this and still have some Aston Martin coverage and Fernando Alonso. Maybe this is just a more sensible thing to do. But like I say, I'm going to look FP1, FP2 before I make my final decision, or FP3 as well, before I make my final decision. But that's kind of where my thoughts are at the moment. Yeah, so let's have a look at questions. So I've put in here, ask me anything F1 fantasy related, and I'll answer it in my next video. Well, here I am in my next video, and let's start answering. So F1 Fantasy Hub, what overall rank is Potpan Baby's team? Well, Potpan Baby is 3 months old, so she doesn't have a team. But if she did, it'd probably be better than me, to be honest. I don't know. She doesn't have any points. She doesn't have any team. I mean, I have considered like putting one of these teams, which to be honest, I'm not even paying attention to. Like, you can tell I'm not paying attention to. I've got 2 times on the clerk on team 2, so I could put like a baby team, maybe for the second half of the season, and just get her to randomly like poke the mouse and pick some drivers. But yeah, so basically to answer this question, There's no rank. I'm sorry. It's very disappointing. I'll try and do better. Triple up on McLaren. Again, I've kind of touched it. Danny Ricciardo, stop blowing kisses at me. Triple up on McLaren. I've touched on this already. Like I said, some of these questions I would have already covered. But the triple up, I think, because my current feeling is that the McLarens aren't necessarily going to be lightning fast around the Hungaroring, I would say no. But obviously with the little asterisk as, you know, watch FP1, FP2, FP3, and maybe I'll change my mind. But I think I'd probably still want at least some Aston Martin coverage going into Hungary, but we'll see. It might be a case of just sticking with Alonso and then going McLaren constructor, because I do think, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I kind of want the McLaren constructor, just so it's kind of set up for Spa and in case of price changes, that sort of thing. We could see some dramatic price changes if McLaren is suddenly looking good. Right. Danny Ricciardo's been super distracting here. Thank you, Mike. Danny Ricciardo, obviously I've already covered so far. My kind of final summary of thoughts on Danny Ricciardo is I'll get him in my team as long as I can afford him in that budget slot. I wouldn't probably put him in. I would consider it, but I probably wouldn't put him in if he comes in at a random 8 million price or something ridiculous. I don't think he will, because he's in that AlphaTauri, which is, as we know, I'm sorry, I need to scroll away from you blowing kisses at me. It's so distracting. I think the AlphaTauri, as we know, is not a good car. Tsunoda's kind of driven the socks off that thing and is still only just about scraped into the points a couple of times. So I'm not expecting any true magic from Danny Ricciardo. That said, you know, could happen. And the main reason I'd put him in there is driver of the day. And then going forward, we'll see. We'll see how he performs in Hungary before we, you know, consider any further. But for Hungary, as long as he's in that price range, then he's in the team for me. Right, let's scroll down so I don't have to look at Ricciardo's face. I'm sorry. McLaren worth in Hungary, yeah, of course. As I've already touched on, I'm not going to go into too much more detail on that. But basically, yes, I think they're worth at least some coverage, even if it's just Piastri or maybe just a constructor. Or if you want to go a bit heavier and go constructor Piastri, or if you want to go all in, then the triple up. That's a bit of a rubbish answer. Basically, you can do whatever you want. I don't have a clue. But yeah, we don't. The truth is, we don't know how strong McLaren are going to be. Obviously, if they're going to be the second fastest car again, then 100% I would triple up. But yeah, as for the next question as well, Aston Martin versus McLaren, I would love some in-depth analysis. I'm not sure if me waffling for the last 10 minutes counts as in-depth analysis, because the truth is we just don't know who to pick until we've seen some data, and that's going to come from the practice sessions. But I can tell you my current feeling and my hunch is that Aston Martin are going to be better, and I hate myself for saying this. Right, next up is Palace Ash. So this question, why do some cars' tyres degrade faster than others, isn't really a fantasy question, I guess, although you can use that knowledge to pick your fantasy assets. So tyre degradation is kind of a result of several factors, really. It comes from obviously the car itself and the design of the car, how much downforce there is on the car. Less downforce on the car puts extra strain on the tyres. Also, the car's ability to heat up the tyres. If the tyres aren't in the working window, then they have to work harder to grip the track. Similarly, for the lack of downforce, if you're going around corners without good downforce, and those tyres are working extra hard, which means they're going to degrade faster. Also, driving style. If you're a bit more of an aggressive driving style, going a bit more harder into those corners, then you're putting, again, extra strain on the tyres. There's a whole kind of host of reasons, really. I'm sure I'll think of some others when I finish the video, to be honest. But in general, it's kind of like the car setup, driver style, just the car structure itself, and temperature. Kind of the main things I can think of off the top of my head. Team on only 109.5. Where do I make the cut? 109.5. What does that leave us with? How much money have I got? Let me have a quick check before I answer your question. So you got 109.5. So I've got approximately 2 million more. So if we jump back in. So if I've got 2 million more, that means I need to basically shave 2 million off this. So I think it's got to be in the budget option. And in fact, if where are my drivers? If we can afford Ricciardo, you could just go with a team like this. You can scrap off the McLarens in terms of the constructor. That gives you a little bit of a margin there. Also, if you want to go McLaren, let's see what you can do with McLaren. We can go there, and then with the driver 8.9, you can still actually afford Piastri as well, can't you? So yeah, all right, that's me. I'm looking at the budget completely wrong. You cannot afford Piastri if you've only got 109 point whatever. So you'd have to get someone down to like 6 million and below. So you've already got Ricciardo down there. So you could go. I think in general I would say Alex Albon, but I don't think he's going to do particularly well around Hungary. However, he could be just a hold. particularly if his budget keeps going up, his price goes up. And I do think he'll be good around Spa, so you could just hold Alex Albon otherwise. I don't think I want to touch Magnussen despite him being good for overtakes. So next up would probably be Guan Yu Zhou, to be honest, and maybe a team like this going into the next race. You could also argue like cutting down Perez to someone like George Russell. George Russell, I think he got pole in Hungary last season. But personally, I think I would probably just stick with the Red Bulls, even though Perez isn't looking too great, because he's still good for fantasy points, making up those gains in the race. So I'm not sure if that answered your question or not. I'm sorry. Again, just this whole video is just a bunch of waffle, basically, isn't it? So let's carry on. Can you please focus on track-specific constructors? Which constructors? Well, again, I kind of already touched on this. I think it depends on what the car is suited to, and that's why I'm saying like Aston Martin as a constructor could be more suited to those kind of slower paced tracks. If I look at my calendar, Hungary, possibly Zandvoort, Singapore. Past that, there's not a lot of too many slow pace tracks going forward. You like Spa, Monza, etc. They're going to suit cars that like straight line speed. Obviously, the Williams we know is good in straight line. The Red Bull, particularly if it's DRS. The Ferrari is pretty good in a straight line as well. So when it comes to Monza in a few races time, could be potentially looking at Ferrari if we want to hate ourselves a little bit. But in general, you just kind of want to look at the car's strengths. Again, an example I've given already in this video is the McLaren, good at high-speed corners. So look at the next track that's coming along. Are there high-speed corners in it? Hungary, no, not any high-speed corners. So are McLaren going to be great? Probably not, but kind of excited and want to pick them anyway. But yeah, looking at Spa, there's some more high-speed stuff. So I think Spa could definitely suit the McLarens. So yeah, it's kind of just taking a kind of an overall picture, thinking about what the car strengths are, what the car's weaknesses are, and then picking based on each track as you come along. And then finally, I've actually done an entire video on this question. Why do you think the game has been so much worse this year? Personally, for me, it's the pricing, no limit for DRS boost and removal of streaks. Yeah, I agree with all those points, Jay. No limit for DRS boost means everyone every week is just putting it on Verstappen. Maybe occasionally people put it on Perez, but I think it's just sensible to put it on Verstappen. Removal of streaks also adds to a lack of variety as well, for sure. But for me, definitely the big thing is the pricing, and I'm glad they've made it a bit of a change now in terms of making the price changes bigger, like going up by $1 million or $500,000, or it's still a bit erratic, the price changes, and we're seeing people who have bad races, like Ocon in Silverstone had a bad race and drops just 0.1, but then Norris has a good race and goes up 1.5. It's like the discrepancy there is a bit too big for me. It's a bit random and unpredictable, and I'm not really keen on it. But at least they're doing something to change it up. The main problem is the initial price and the fact that triple Red Bull, triple Aston Martin have been affordable throughout the season, and nothing's really been done about that. So it's been kind of easy picking so far. But now, thankfully, the McLarens are here, so we can look at the McLarens and not pick them because Aston Martin is still better. So I agree with you, to be honest. But I have done an entire video on answering that question. So hopefully, if I can. Check on my channel and look at my video of complaints. So that kind of sums up my video for now. If we just go back to the team, to my final kind of idea for what I'm going to go with at the moment. I am kind of tempted by something like this. Like I say, if the McLarens don't live up to expectation and the Aston Martin do kind of still look strong, then it's quite an easy switch. McLaren constructor out, and then Aston Martin in, or you could even argue dropping out Piastri for Stroll, for example. But I think personally, the team I'm looking at the moment is probably this, but I think I'm very tempted to also just be patient and hold Aston Martin for another week, because I think they should be strong around here. So it saddens me to say that. I want to get excited. I want to be excited and just jump on the new shiny toy that's bright and orange, but I'm not sure it is the right pick at the moment, but we'll see what happens in the practice sessions. Thank you very much. See you on Friday. Bye for now.